Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Perspective Philosophy, where we try to. I saw PP and I just instantly said my own name. We were trying to better our perceptions of the world through philosophical discussion. I hope everyone's having a lovely night tonight and is ready for a nice discussion on justice. What is justice? I'm going to talk about this because it is the International Day of Social Justice. Now, I didn't even know this was a thing, right? I was just looking at the news and then I found out that it's the International Day of Social Justice. So, yeah, I think it's very interesting that we have an International Day of Social Justice. I'm very much on board of that, with that. But obviously, justice, it hasn't always meant the same thing. Not only has justice not only meant the same thing, but does it even mean the same thing in a global understanding of the term and of the concept? And these are the things that we're going to kind of talk about during this discussion. It's going to be more of a dialogue than anything, because I want to hear what you guys think justice is as well. I want to hear what justice is for you guys, what you think it is, because yeah, like there is a lot to unpack. To give people like justice as being on time. Well, apparently I don't think so. um, so let's break it down. Like, I think we need to start somewhere with this stream, right? What is justice? So justice is essentially, one second, I'll tell you what justice is. Justice, the word, etymologically comes from the Latin word justus, which I think meant like upright or something. It's actually a very funny word. Oh dear Lord, what the hell's going on? I think justus, Latin. I think it's justus. Am I spelling that right? Meaning upright. Yeah. But it essentially relates to the god, who I think she was called Just. Actually, I'll have to double check that. But it was their version of Dike. So the ancient Romans mapped their god, which we actually see all over the place, Lady Justice, as from Dike. Dike was the god of justice in ancient Greece. And she essentially, was believed to have a divine order and help divine order the world. And she was, associated with Zeus, as everyone in relation to order is associated with Zeus. Looking at the Platonic dialogues and at the time of the ancient Greeks, the Greeks at that time believed that justice was doing harm to one's. These are the understandings of justice that are perpetuated in, let's say, Plato's Republic. Doing harm to one's friends, one's enemies, and good by one's friends. Paying your debts, and then later on they talk about getting what is owed. Mima, you fucking memed us already. Absolutely. So each one of these is essentially rejected in Plato's Republic, at least all the way through. And then, what they do relate to is the common Greek understanding of the term. And the term at the time really had more to do with the enactment of power in relation to one's friends and enemies. Okay, doing good by one's friends and harm to one's enemies. In Plato's Protagoras, which is the Socratic dialogues before this, justice was thought to be given by Zeus to undo the damage that Prometheus had done by giving men fire. By having given man fire, he had led to our perpetual self-destruction, and so justice was our capacity to work together to produce the polis and therefore enable us to live in a fair and equal society. Well, not fair and equal society, actually, more like a functioning society. It allows us to produce a state. Fair and equal hadn't really been thinking yet, like actually came around yet. Then, if we move to Aristotle, justice is taken to be distributive and in relation to the government. The government ensures a fair trade. Okay? The important thing to recognize in Aristotle, though, is that justice then moves from being just a universal to also a individual or an enactment of justice. He separated them out. So there was the universal conception of justice, what justice is, and then there was what we do in the world. So these are the ancient conceptions of justice. Then you had people that come around like David Hume, who thought justice was just a social phenomena. Same with Thomas Hobbes. Hobbes saw it as a necessary social phenomena, though, in order to maintain order. But each of them had a moral grounding for justice. Justice was usually in relation to getting what one was owed. Okay? And it was essentially either a power balance or it had a moral foundation. Hegel saw justice as a way of essentially respecting the property rights of individuals, which he saw as the fundamental ethical tenet of reality, that everyone, essentially was an individual who had equal experiences, could hold property. And so when we talk about justice and fairness, we are actually balancing what is owed in relation to other individuals by what they are and what they've done in the world. And all of these accounts of justice have been the bedrock of how we've been engaging with the concept for a long time. If you look at what we have been doing in terms of the way in which we talk about justice today, we usually talk about justice as fairness. That's a concept that was perpetuated by John Rawls, a liberal philosopher. So he saw justice as fairness. And I think that's usually how we understand it today. Justice is essentially getting what is I'd say deserved. Okay. Okay, so there's a nice little history lesson for justice. Okay, one's end, and I'm just going to quickly... Right. Yeah, justice is an interesting topic. It's a shame that it's one that we don't normally talk about in society. So, justice has taken on many roles within society, whether it's lawfulness, divine justice, distributionary justice, and corrective justice. So, in terms of, preventing crimes and correcting crimes that are done, that'd be corrective justice. Distributive justice is the way in which we transfer property from one person to another. Trying to think what else. Trying to think how else justice is actually used in society off the top of my head. I can't really actually say it, but like justice is essentially usually taken to be a balance between individuals in a relationship, which is why it ties so heavily into other moral concepts such as equality and liberty. Justice is usually tied to things like, depending on the individual's moral framework, like John Rawls and John Locke, it would be tied to the inalienable rights of the individual. In terms of someone like Hume, justice was a social construct. Although it couldn't be fully explained by the passions, it was essentially a manifestation of human behavior and activity, and not related to anything that's metaphysically grounded. There's no actual justice in reality. Hobbes saw justice as power, just the balancing of power in order to maintain a civil society. And Hegel saw justice as the necessary ethical component in order to achieve a given end and uphold concepts such as contracts and other ethical endeavors, which are not only necessary for society but are necessary and sufficient for our goal of happiness and our achievement of happiness. The issue is, in society today, there is a lot of injustice. Okay, there is so much injustice actually in terms of distributional justice. There's a lot of injustice in terms of correctional justice. And there is a lot of injustice in the way in which people approach how we even talk and engage on the concept of justice. And that's all because justice as a concept, although is ethically and morally grounded, is centralized in a system which is based around the monopolization of force. Okay? So justice in which we see in society, whether it's distributional justice, whether it's corrective justice, and so on, never actually represents the discourse around justice and the moral concepts in which presuppose it. Or that it presupposes. So typically you see a bridge between lawfulness and justice, even though lawfulness is supposed to be a representation of justice. Teach me, Daddy. Obviously, it's the Canadian dad jumper. Yeah, the monopoly of violence. So these are some of the issues that we face today. Socialists would normally argue that our society is unjust in relation to a distributionary problem. The way in which individuals are treated as a means to an end shows that they aren't being given what is owed, namely the value of their labour. So socialists deem capitalism as an unjust system. In terms of racial justice with Black Lives Matter, that's in relation to corrective justice, that they are being unfairly treated by the quote-unquote justice system. They are being treated in a way they are not being given the respect what they are owed by those institutions. So Black Lives Matter is campaigning in order to show that young, well, not necessarily young, but a lot of African Americans are facing violence unnecessarily at the hands of the police, or that they are coming into contact with the police because of a distributionary problem, or, and I think this is the real one that is most substantive, to be entirely honest with you, that black people are given unfair and unjust sentencing in the United States for the crimes that they commit. So they have an issue with corrective justice. In terms of international justice, we are facing issues right now with the coup in Myanmar. I can't really say that very well. And the forced suppression of the population. The population are being not considered in terms of an ethical relationship with their governance. And so human rights violations are occurring. People aren't being given the respect that they're entitled to. And so pretty much every form of justice is being violated there. In terms of civil rights movements across the world, if we see the way in which women are treated in many nations around the world, we can see that there are severe issues in relation to how women are treated in the Middle East. And to be entirely honest with you, I think it was like over 50 countries still prevent women from, was it education, like equal education? Well, there was an incredible amount of countries that alienate women from education, that alienate women from even driving. I thought that was the strangest thing. So when we talk about justice and getting what is owed, it's always in relation to a moral foundation. And so really what we're going to be talking about here is what you think the moral foundation of justice is. So guys, everyone in chat, tell me what you think the moral foundation for justice is. What is justice? What kind of justice are fairies? What are the prerequisites of justice and how do we know them? Does justice require force or agreement? I would say that, well, the prerequisite of justice, I would say that the prerequisites of justice are ethical foundations in terms of what people are actually owed. So that's one of the reasons why Plato accused, I was like Plato, yeah, really. But Socrates accused the interlocutor in the Republic of talking as a poet when he talked about justice. When he said getting what is owed, and he's like, what do you mean getting what is owed? Like, you're just speaking in riddles, like what is owed. So when we talk about justice, there always has to be an ethical foundation for that. And the first law of thermodynamics, what is it? What is it? I thought is it the first? What is the first law of thermodynamics? I'm thinking of the third. The conservation of energy. I thought you were going to make like a... kind of hard question answer in 200 characters. Absolutely. But like you can say like it's egoism. It's the foundation is, you know, it could be egoism. It could be artificial. There is no such thing as justice. What do you think justice is in just in terms of an ethical relationship with the other? Like, do you think that you are owed anything in general, or is there an inalienable human right? I am but a geographer. Geographers have a good understanding of justice. You could do human geography and shit. Right. Okay. So I would say that the foundation of justice in relation to an understanding of what people are owed relates to the value in which we give to others inherently before we can even talk about them in a relationship and in various circumstances. So when we talk about the value of a given individual, let's say random man A and random man B, or random woman C, each one of them is given a value in relation to what they are owed in terms of basic respect. And then from that point on, we can talk about their relationships with others. So if man A and man B interact, we can talk about what they are owed in relation to that interaction. So if they make a contract and they agree that they would fulfill each side of the contract, you know, both sides are, one guy's giving the other guy £10 for, I don't even know what the hell, like I don't know, a camera, a very cheap camera, then yeah, he's got to fulfill his side of the contract. And to do that, to get what is owed is determined by the contract. But to be able to sign the contract in the first place requires an ethical understanding that we ought to respect people as being capable of producing contracts, and we ought to respect people in contracts. So we need to understand the foundations of justice. And this is where I think a lot of people go wrong in terms of how we engage with justice, which is why you get people a lot of the time in society today talking about justice in ways that is fundamentally dubious at best. So you get people talking about whether people should get the death penalty, for example, or what crimes are deserving of what punishments, or you know, what should be expected of certain, let's say, advertisers or companies engaged in the market. These understandings, these conceptions of how justice is enacted, is built upon the prior conceived understandings of how justice operates in the first place. So, like questioned earlier, is it a fulfillment of a moral or maybe value system between two or more others? I would say so. It's about it's about essentially the understanding of value between agents. I would say it's axiological. I don't like contractarianism, and I'm not arguing for contractarianism. And exactly why I'm not arguing for contractarianism is because of what I've just said. So, John Locke saw justice, you know, being perpetuated by a contract. Like, justice is fulfilling your side of the contract. But what I'm showing, and this is the Hegelian position, is that before you can even say that someone is capable of signing, agreeing, and engaging in a contract, we've already presupposed a level of justice which allows them to be respected to that degree. That we ought to respect people's, like, other people in our contracts, or that we ought to make contracts with others, or that others are capable of making contracts. So in each case, we are already in a value engagement with other individuals. And when we talk about justice, we need to talk about those underlying values from which we engage reality with, like the lens from which we engage and with the other. Yeah, exchanges presuppose absence/presence of recognition and respect. I would completely agree. I think that, like, you need a level of respect and recognition. I like the word recognition. Bisasoso. Can't say that. Besaso. I can't say that. I am very sorry. I'm never going to be. Bisaseso. Did I say that right there? I think the word recognition is absolutely right. Well, this is the thing. Is justice trust? That's actually a really great point in Imperial Gothic games, because trust fundamentally is the agreement and mutual recognition of parties. So if I have trust, I have an implicit agreement with another individual upon a shared concept, which is why you get people like Robert Brandom talking about trust and the spirit of trust in relation to Hegel. So trust is like an underpinning concept which is engaged in between individuals, which is essentially the mutual cooperation around how we understand reality and how we engage with one another. So that's actually, I think, a really great point, Imperial Gothic games. And I think the issue is we don't have trust today in society. And I think there's reasons for that. I think that we are alienated from one another in divisive politics. I think that in a global system, there is cultural and there's linguistic and cultural barriers that and historical philosophical differences that divide us and prevent us from having a fair and equal relationship. What are the implicit consequences of being a cloud shark? Well, that depends. I think the initial consequence would be, I don't know, what would it be? It would probably the inability to have a fair engagement with other individuals on the platform. People would no longer trust you. They'd probably think that you are only in it for yourself. Is reciprocity a good foundation for justice? I'd assume that would be a many egoist take. Yes, I would say that reciprocity is a very good foundation for justice, but I would say that that understanding of justice presupposes an understanding of what is valuable in the first place. So we could say that, like, we can have contracts in which individuals can engage in order to maximize your interests from which you do not know. So, or even like prior to contracts, we could agree that individuals could understand aspects of yourself and what you are owed without your knowledge of what is actually owed to you. So, yeah. Okay. People want justice only for their own group. People usually just want justice for their own group, sadly. I don't think so. I think that people usually have a universal conception of justice from which they try to enact upon the world. I think that, for example, if you ask the average Brit, do they think it's just that something like the bombing of like what was it, like Lebanon? Do they think that's just? They'd probably say no, and they would want it to stop, or the occupation in Palestine or something like that. Or most Brits have a moral conscience, I would say, which extends beyond their group. I think that people that usually want it for only their in-group are operating on a usually dated tribalistic morality. And I think that is, again, like, it's how far we extend justice. And this is why it's so important to talk about how we engage with the other. Because let's like think about it like this. When we talk about what the other is defined by a relationship with the identity that we have taken upon ourselves. So when originally the other is simply that which negates our conception of reality, and only through cooperation do we obtain an identity, a positive identity in relation to the other. I gain myself and the other when I accept that they're capable of negating my worldview. So it's phenomenologically, I'm given like the I in relation to something which can dismiss me being the world in a Levinasian kind of framework. If we take that beyond the individual and we move it to a group mentality, we can see that this can then apply to, a group understanding of self, or a tribalistic understanding of self, like a we, an us, and then a them and they, right? And the group itself can only then develop an identity in relation to the existence of the other. So then it's negated by the proposition of the other. And so only through cooperation can it actually obtain a positive identity in relation to the other. So if it goes into a state of war, it can have the identity of the other as essentially a non, as essentially like their negation of the other as being part of themselves. But they never will obtain self-knowledge in that respect. So they'll never actually be able to obtain whether their identity is accurately being applied and whether their identity actually encompasses what they believe it encompasses. And so the sense of identity becomes ungrounded and soon dogmatic. When it starts becoming more and more universal, I would argue that the identity is founded stronger and stronger upon metaphysical concepts from which rely upon epistemological engagement within the group, which give us the highest probability of obtaining knowledge of ourselves through internal and external critique. So justice, but this hasn't been the case historically. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm never debating fascists again. Yeah, so I would say that ultimately, like justice, in terms of in-groups and out-groups, I would say that this usually collapses because of the desire for the universality of justice in order to actually understand what is owed in relation, what is deserved in relation to yourself, to understand yourself and what you can expect from life, what you should expect from life. And so I think these things do fall down. Oh, hi, Truda was taken. Yeah, and Barry, I completely agree. Like, in terms of, like I don't know if you're referencing the guy that I was debating last night, but my God, I will never debate fascists again. Like, not on this platform. Like, not at all, ever again. I think I just want to. I'll make videos on fascism and why it's wrong. I'll talk about the ideology and what is bad about it. But actively engaging with a fascist is just painful. Like, it's just unbelievably painful. Like, no, not again. No thanks. Like, I don't know. I don't know, man. I just think that, like, it's like just a failed ideology. And never mind, like now me Twitter is like full of so I like posted like, oh, I'm never dealing with fascists again. Oh, they're so insufferable, blah blah blah. And now me Twitter is spammed by like loads of fascists, and I just want the fascists to go away because they're just fucking what a terrible aesthetic as well. Like even if you believe reality was just aestheticism, at least pick a bloody political side that's got a good aesthetic. Ugh. Any films do you think that explain philosophical or ethical concepts really well? Um, yeah, but it depends on what concepts. So like, I think Gattaca was a really good one for like how prejudice functions. I'm trying to think of other ones that were like really good. Like I think Snowpiercer was a good one for class contention and like ideology. Um, Trying to think of other films that are like really good for explaining ethical takes. Um, are there non-fascist authoritarians with semi-consistent views we could debate? I have no idea. Like to be entirely honest with you, like I think authoritarianism. If I'm going to debate an authoritarian, I'll debate a tanky because at least then like I feel like the heart is usually in the right place with the tankies. Like they're like, we need a level of justice which includes everyone, and the only way we're going to be able to do that is with force. It's like with the fascist, it's like, um, there is no such thing as justice, only power. We must conquer the world. Like it's like you've had a really bad life, haven't you, or something? Like something has happened that has just produced a really awful like psyche. Yeah, that or like it's the other way around. Like they've not been shown adequate like restrictions in life, and so they've not like the poor parenting or something like that. There's just got to be like there's something got to go wrong in childhood to produce a fascist. Like I don't know. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I can't still really understand your argument that in order to cognize ethics, we need to universalize it because common language domain or something. I'm not really well read enough. Yeah, that's fine. Like it's not about understanding ethics. Like we can understand ethics. It's about understanding the metaphysical foundation from which ethics is trying to engage in. So like ethics is trying to work out what behaviors will bring around that which is good. And to understand that which is good, we need to understand ourselves. Like understand, how we experience good and bad. In order to understand ourselves, we need to engage with others in order to understand not only ourselves but the concept of good and bad. Because it's like if we try and take a private view, ontologically, it's going to be devoid of meaning. So what we need to do is talk about like value in and of itself, that which is valuable. Like talk about what is good for, humans, animals, and so on. And so when we talk about what is good for these creatures, we can say they hold in common what is good, what is valuable, and what is valuable holds in common what is the way in which we should behave. Higher values. And I would argue that if we can gain an understanding of universal values from which we ourselves will find ourselves in, then we will be able to accurately divest the value within ourselves and act in accordance with it. And so ethics, if it's objective, should be in relation to that metaphysical foundation, which is the value, the substantiation of value of all within all sentient beings, and in which case you're more likely to achieve, you will have ethical knowledge and be able to actually engage ethically within the world in a way that is not mistaken. The lack of understanding injustice is not a lack in justice, but in man. Yeah, I probably agree. In terms of trade, populations tend to the right. In terms of prosperity, they tend to the left. Debating fascists is worth doing if you can plant seeds of understanding. I agree, Tomato, but it's really hard to plant seeds of understanding in people who are literally like authoritarian people, like that are so authoritarian that they want to silence you and yell over your head. It's like even in debating the fascists yesterday, they tried like promoting themselves and like loads of different like other channels, like by like yelling over us. At the end, like I'd cut the stream off by the time they were doing it, but they were trying to like actually like just shout over my head, and I'm not gonna platform that kind of nonsense. So it's like, on one hand, you need to show why the views are wrong, which is why I had them on, and on the other hand, platforming them is dangerous because they try to appeal to an aesthetic in order to mobilize, let's say, the ignorant, in order to, you know, or the easily radicalized, those people who are usually existentially vulnerable. And so you kind of end up in this scenario where if you don't like pull them up, they plant seeds in people who could have known better if you had have pulled them up. But if you do pull them up, then they're also given the platform to plant seeds in others. So I think making videos on fascism and why it's wrong is probably the better way to go about it. Hegelian ethics are very Kantian and exactly more emphasis on community, like a necessity of community. Like we need community to understand those values from which we are trying to propagate. Self relations to group, understanding dynamics, contemplate and develop justice, relative group dynamic makes sense. Why justice is culturally dynamic. Yeah, well, it would not only just be culturally dynamic, but it seem like obviously it's relative to the socio-political language game, but in each identity, it's like it's more of a metaphysical point. Like the purpose of self-consciousness and identity in the first place is the expression of will, which is inherent to consciousness and subjectivity. So really, like when we talk about the separation between animals and humans and first order and second order desires, if an animal is a first order desiring organism, it operates on like instinct and maybe like inherent conceptualizations, like it kind of goes along and operates on its base desires, not really questioning them. A human creates an identity, self-awareness. It questions its desires, it contemplates and decides between them. Now, that could happen. I think self-awareness does happen in animals, but what holds self-awareness like identity constant is language. And language gives the possibility of self-knowledge, not just self-awareness, but self-knowledge. So now you can make claims about what you are and how and understand yourself in relation to those values from which you experience. So then you gain an insight into, in terms of self-association, into future events that are likely to occur in relation to what is currently happening to others, for example. So in my association with another, in terms of identity, I'm given knowledge about myself. So let's say take the smoker who smokes gets cancer, lets me know that it's awfully painful and they wish they'd never done it. I can take that knowledge and apply it to myself in order to minimize the likelihood of experiencing that negative experience. Now, that's only possible because of the association of myself in terms of identity with the other, and it's only possible through language. So when we talk about how we associate ourselves with others, we are given a common foundation from which we are able to understand and make knowledge claims about. The more universal that foundation, the more common and the more agreed upon it is, the more epistemically founded it is, the more the more proven it is. The more proven it is, the more prudent I can act in the world, the more ethically capable I can act in the world to even achieve my own interests. And so ultimately engaging with others in ethics, talking about what behaviors we should propagate and universalize, ultimately leads us to live lives which are likely to produce better outcomes for the individual. And that's why egoism ultimately doesn't work, because egoism presupposes a given end. And when you do that, ultimately you lead yourself into foolhardiness. If you engage in a universal and you engage towards universal conceptions of behavior, you ultimately you free yourself from bias and subjectivity. You free yourself from ignorance, and it gives you the possibility of expressing your subjectivity in an objective way. And that's the important thing to recognize, and that's a very continental way of looking at it. Why did I interrupt that poor fascist? They only want to enslave all of us and under an oppressive authoritarian regime. I know. It's the fact that he was interrupting me just as much. I don't know. I don't know. It's just, goddamn. Yeah, I think you're probably right that debates do draw a bit greater audience than educational videos, but you know, it's a risk reward ratio tomato, and I don't know whether it's a good idea. You know what I mean? This is going to be a somewhat speedy stream tonight as well. So if any of you have any questions, just drop them into the chat, because this is going to be somewhat of a speedy stream. So I've got to get this Patreon video done, and I keep falling behind on it. Oh my god, my patrons must hate me. Oh yeah. I'm actually going to be making like a philosophy 101 bootcamp kind of series, Chairman. Like that's what I'm actually planning on making. What's up, man? Brian, how you doing? I just honestly, tomato, like the idea of like even just engaging with people that like it comes to a point when it's like that views genuinely make me feel physically ill. Like before I got into the conversation, the guy said that the only reason that he thought the Holocaust was wrong was because it was a waste of resources. He said that his uncle was a war criminal and that he was proud of him. And one of them said that they were a Nazi. Now, you know what I think's incredibly ironic? There is a server out there that has a Nazi and a Serbian fascist in it. Yet the Nazi, if they came to power, like if Nazis came to power in Germany, would seek to exterminate that Serbian fascist. So like them working together is a unity of what, like temporary mutual advantage until one group actually obtains power and just murders the other group. Like what kind of like alliance is that? I don't know, man. It's fucking dumb. I will be covering more postmodern philosophers. I really want to do more Foucault. Like I need to finish the Foucault series. I don't understand how you can have a moral realist position without being religious. Well, I'm related to nature. I'm a naturalist, so I would say that it's instantiated by nature. I don't need God to say that. You can get it out sooner than later. You don't need the sleep. I have no idea what the ET on that is straight away. Like right now I'm making a course on like an introduction to Western philosophy. So I need to make that first before I make anything like that. And obviously it'll be of far less quality than the course, but breaking down some of the basic concepts. The problem is that you're too nice, PP. They didn't deserve that much courtesy from you, to be honest. Well, no, I just think that at the end of the day, like I gave them my ear in the debate to genuinely show them why I would argue they were wrong. And I think at least I did that. I can say, like, I can go to bed tonight and go, yeah, like, look, I talked to that fascist and I can think that his arguments are not good. And I think I showed that his arguments weren't good. And I think that's all you can do, right? Like, I mean, I just don't know. I just don't know what necessarily has to go wrong in a person to genuinely take those views, man. Oh, thank you very much for the donation, Wicked Fatigue. How would an authoritarian regime without free speech for the public and without a platform for and without a platform for feedback improve its ability to govern, except for maybe from criticism from other governments? Well, no, this is exactly what I was trying to explain. Wicked Fatigue, but thank you for the donation, by the way. I was trying to show that if you have a master-slave relationship, whatever the master asserts is given to be the end goal and like good for that regime. And so there's two things to consider. It means that the sovereign themselves, and this is the Hegel's kind of the end of Hegel's phenomenology, and this is what Dr. David Rose says in terms of in reference to the phenomenology of spirit. It seems that everyone has subjectivity except for the king, because the king and their will, for Hegel, is only an expression of the objective will of the people, for one. But two, even if the king was allowed to be a master in a master-slave relationship, then their subjectivity is essentially it's impossible, because they assert a given end, it's taken to be the end, and ultimately it's never challenged. So ultimately, in terms of hierarchy, unjustified hierarchy is fundamentally bad for the individual in power. And so when you talk about like their ability to govern, it's not just about their ability to govern, which is, yes, absolutely exactly the same. Like they'll create unjustified rules which will like harm and worsen society, but they'll also harm themselves and lead lives that necessarily aren't worth living, which is actually what Socrates talked about in relation to a tyrant in Greece over 2,000 years ago. He talked about how in relation, it was in Gorgias, and he speaks to Callices, and he outlines that it is better to be the man being tortured than the man doing the torturing. And basically the point goes like, if you can live a meaningful and a good life as the man being tortured. Like you may be in a lot of pain now, but ultimately your life is meaningful and you could have lived a good life. The one doing the torturing could never live the good life. They are essentially like hapless beasts, engaged in a level of self-soothing almost, or satisfaction, which may very well lead them down a path of self-destruction. So that they're playing ethical roulette, which more often than not leads to their own suffering and misery. And I think this is like really quite easy to understand. But unfortunately, when we talk about power today in society, people take power to be a non-ethical concept. When power in not in ancient Greece, but in a Socratic sense, power was an ethical concept. He's like, what does he say? Is the fool powerful when he gets what he wants? And he's like, well, of course not. He's a fool. He's already, when he gets what he wants, definitionally, he's gotten something that's not worth wanting. And so power itself is mediated by ethics. And so if you want to be powerful, the most powerful person is the most ethical. And this is essentially an argument I'm going to be using to defend the Trinity, actually, in terms of in relation to a conversation I'm going to be having with Cosmic Skeptic and Rationality Rules, just to give it away a bit. Because I would argue that omnipotence implies omnibenevolence, that the most powerful being would ipso facto be the most ethical being in order to express their will to the greatest possible degree. And I think Hegel shows that in relation to the expression of the will. And I think that unfortunately people usually take, when we talk about the will to power, take a very Nietzschean understanding of the will and how to obtain a given end by nature, and they don't actually consider they understand maybe the balance, if they're lucky, between the Dionysian and Apollian values, but they don't understand how they actually relate to reality. So there is no justice in the UK unless you have money for a solicitor. That is actually a very great point, Grumpy Vegan Grandad. I couldn't agree more. The removal of what's it called? Shit, what's it called? The removal of what the hell is it called, man? Oh no, don't tell us. Oh. It was there. legal aid, the removal of legal aid, awful, like worst thing ever. Genuinely alienating people from the capacity to make to take legal pursuits without unless they're capable of paying for the solicitors. Disgusting. You're a victim of it twice. I'm not surprised. Like, honestly, I hope you're okay. I've even wanted to take legal action and not being able to. It's disgusting. It is. And even if you try, like, some people say, like, well, go pro bono and stuff. Find a solicitor that'll, like, no win, no fee. But finding them sometimes is really difficult in terms of, like, certain engagements. Like, they really just go for, like, did you fall down in Lidl? Well, you could be entitled to £10,000, or like, do you want to reclaim, like, something that you never find it like, oh, I was discriminated against. I would like to go pro bono. It's like, oh well, never mind. To disarm by being the best arm is the way to real peace, power, and ethics. Yeah. I'm not sure what you're saying there, the chairman. Yeah, that's probably the wise thing, and they always get you on that, like, risk reward ratio, man, and you don't understand the laws and the procedure, so you kind of shit. You kind of just fucked, really. I don't know what you mean, the chairman, by to disarm by being the best arm is the way to real peace. I disagree. Like the reality is, it's not like what you're instantiating is, like, I think you're right there, Fanog, almost. It sounds like a might makes right. It's not about Oh, right. You're referencing Nietzsche. Oh, okay. Yeah, Nietzsche definitely believed that the most ethical was but he just thought that the will to power was all that really mattered. Like, there was no foundation beyond the will to power. So it's like, to be the most powerful is to be the best, and to be the best is to have the most capacity to self, like, determine, and like that's essentially it, really. So, like, will, like, it's almost like what the like the Ubermensch, like, the in terms of the metamorphosis of the spirit, it's the child. It's that which can will itself, the will which wills itself. Oh dear God, grumpy vegan granddad, you're not having a good time in relation to the justice system. Bloody hell. Bloody hell. Right, guys. So I'm going to be staying on for the next 7 minutes. It's really going to be quite a short stream tonight because I've got loads of work to do. And we'll do probably a big boy stream tomorrow. I don't think for Nietzsche that it would be like the most ethical would be the most powerful, because he saw, like, it all being, like, all of it being I don't think, well, I know he wouldn't say that, because he thought the genealogy of morals was in relation to power in the first place. So what is ethical was power in the first place. Wow, show up late and leave early. I know. Well, to be fair, I did explain why I couldn't get on sooner. Sorry, the chairman. I haven't read A Tale of the Tub. PP don't go, PP sad. Is there any good reading material for differentiating moral virtue from moral duty? Well, the thing is that, honestly, it depends on the moral philosophy you're talking about, because, like, it depends on. some people don't take virtue and duty to be separate anyway. So the distinction really arises from the individual. Like, I hear a lot of people talking about something being virtuous as if it's commendable, but then saying it's not an obligation. So it's really like, it's not necessarily, it's really separating something like going beyond, excuse me, the call of duty. I'm trying to think of a good book for that. I can't actually at the top of my head, if I'm honest. Like, that would just like focus in on that topic. And otherwise, I'm just going to get into giving you like a load of reading. So, sorry, man. But how would an argue for veganism from Hegelian? How would you argue? All right. So, like the consideration in terms of the individual within Hegel isn't determined by the ethical community from which he exists. So, for example, you could be, like Hegel and like a German, and consider people in Britain, even though you're part of a different ethical community, because it's more to do with the study that is the metaphysical understanding of what is ethical and metaphysically right. What is right in relation to what is genuinely good, which is understood in relation to the ethical community which is investigating it. So it's like, if we engage together to understand what is good and bad, and then what is right and wrong, that is in relation to a metaphysical phenomena that exists independent of the group, and it's actually just the group that we're in studies it. It doesn't determine necessarily, being part of the community doesn't determine our worth, but being in the community allows us to understand what is valuable in the first place, if you see what I mean. It's like, if you're a scientist, you study, like, you don't gain information on what it means to be a scientist necessarily. You gain information about reality, and that's only possible because you're a scientist. Yeah, fines to rich people are just the cost of doing something illegal, while the rich are law-abiding or punished. Oh my god. Yeah, justice has been commodified, vegan something, and I think that's genuinely because of the way that capitalism works. It's like, what is good and bad is in relation to a power structure, which is why you see. That's why Hobbes was really around the time of like proto capitalism. It was like forming around that time in industrialization. Read, mate. Also, in case anyone wanted to hear this, because I saw it in the chat before, Batman. That's how I would say it. Batman. I fucking love Batman, actually. The best hero. Hence the Batman sleeve, But I think Batman, really because of his conception of justice being institutional, like, he hands criminals over to the justice system rather than taking action upon himself. So he's a vigilante, but really he's only emboldening the institutions that exist. He's like really making up for the cracks in the police force. It seems, to me anyway. What are your thoughts on punishment? I think it's sadistic, to be honest. Rehabilitation is impossible, and even if it isn't, then restrict the dangerous individuals. No need for punishment. I believe in punishment in two ways. I think that it's as a deterrent, but also as the respect for the individual in terms of a value transaction. So if you're a criminal, to not punish the individual, knowing that, like, so if a criminal commits a crime, knowing that the punishment for the crime is, let's say, 3 months in prison, then you didn't give them those 3 months in prison. You are treating them as if they did not understand the consequences. Why can't I say this? Consequences. There we go. Of their actions. Couldn't say that for the life of us. in which case you're not treating them as a mature adult and capable of making rational decisions. So when we talk about punishment, I believe in punishment, but what we need to talk about is what punishment fits the crime, what punishment represents what an individual should be given in relation to the value transaction from which they've deprived society. Because ultimately they are trying to assert themselves or their own ends over the good and the ends of society. So they're trying to subvert the system and law. So consequences. Consequences. There we go. And so ultimately there needs to be a value transaction. Like they have a debt to society that needs to be paid. Yeah, exactly. Socrates, like Hegel really is bringing it back to the Greeks. Um, um, he genuinely believes that like being punished is in the benefit of those being like you should want to be punished if you've committed a crime. And Hegel basically says that too, that the criminal the punishment is good for the criminal. What does punishment pay? It's not about paying as in like an actual like debt. It's more of like the expression of the subjectivity of the individuals needs to be respected, and so ultimately it needs to undo the damage caused by that individual who subverted the system and prevent it from happening again. So for example, if you smash up someone's house, your punishment is to pay for that house to be restored. Alleviate the inconvenience that it's caused that individual, and then we would probably act a deterrence upon you to go, look, you basically need rehabilitated now. You're clearly not capable of living in a society that's like rational and so on. Yeah, exactly. Escaping punishment is bad for the criminal as they don't receive the benefit of justice. 100%. English not online. Retry later. Exactly, man. Best hero is rich bourgeois boy with parental issues. So yeah, like I genuinely would take that issue with justice. So ideally, it would reinstate. I'd be like, well, I would say like compensate, and then rehabilitate. So like a form of compensation and rehabilitation. And that's why Hegel sees capital punishment as justified, because he thinks that there can be the only, like in terms of the value transaction, which is respecting the subjectivity of another. If you've absolutely rejected the subjectivity of another, then the only compensation he thought that was appropriate to that scenario was to give your life. Your life is now forfeit. It's funny that you bring that up. Yeah. I don't think punishment should ever be about revenge either. I mean, Kant argued that there was like humans had a need for revenge, that it was like a psychological need. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think that revenge is a good way to. I think that revenge is good. And I think that like prison itself is actually a terrible system. I think that the justice system that we have today is really shit. It just creates a community of delinquents and criminals. And I will continue the Foucault series. I promise, guys. I will break that book down. It's such a good book. There is very few books I read that are just as good as Discipline and Punishment. So good. If there's a world where victims feel good, then you get rewarded for smashing their houses. I have no idea what that even means at this point, Skyline. Like, I have no idea what that even means. I think that I think solitary confinement could also be protection of others, like arguably. So if an individual would genuinely pose a threat to themselves and others, then maybe they would put them in solitary. Yeah, I do have some big plans for 2021. I have some pretty big plans. I want to start doing documentaries at some point. Which would be great. Which is like if I start earning more money, I'll invest it back into doing like full feature length documentaries. I know someone that's like a like pro cameraman. I've been talking to an editor. I stream every day, Powers. I've been streaming every day anyway. I'm honestly burning out a bit at this point because it's been a lot of streaming. But yeah, I'm probably gonna keep doing it. Yeah, I agree. XA13, like murder under this. This is why Hegel thinks murder literally can only be fulfilled by the death of the individual. That so capital punishment. He believes that if you kill someone, you get killed. There we go. That's it. The Matrix analysis has not happened yet. No, that's another big one that's coming out. So I've got the metaphysics of the Matrix, and now I want to do film philosophy episodes. So I'm going to be using loads of films to explain different philosophers and different theories within philosophy. So that's going to be cool. I've already got one film philosophy episode on the true power of the One Ring in Lord of the Rings. I should definitely check that out. Let us know what you think. Because I thought it was an alright video, but then it got copyrighted to shit when I released it. So then it got like, it wasn't allowed to be shown in most places in the world, including Britain and the United States. So it just got like no views, and then nobody knew it was there. And then it was just terrible. It was terrible. So if you do check out the, was it film philosophy, not the metaphysics of the Matrix, that's the next one. Film philosophy, the true power of the One Ring. Let us know what you think of that. Oh, thanks, Powers. I'm glad. And the thing is, the Destiny conversation, I really enjoyed that as well. So, but and Yax, the next one is the metaphysics of the Matrix. But I've been talking to an editor who's also a viewer, who's been like a viewer for a long time, and they're like just passing the like degree now, and we're talking about like getting them to edit. So that's pretty cool. Because like you've got to remember that I understand it seems that the murdered individual cannot be resurrected, but for Hegel, like obviously he's talking about universal justice, and so when we're talking about the way in which the subjective is engaged with the concept of their own freedom, then it is in relation to that the concept which is held constant between us. So it's the universal and not the individual instance. So it's like you can't resurrect the dead person, but you can resolve the value deficit that has been created by the individual killing them within the state. Just what and like obviously the state for Hegel is essentially the foundation of right. So like the movement of the individual to the state allows for the hermeneutic relationship between the individual and the state. So when you commit murder, you don't just murder that individual, and it's not just a crime against them, it's a crime against the state itself, and it's a debt that needs to be paid. Take it easy, Loch Ness. Should Batman kill the Joker? Thank you for the donation. Should Batman kill the Joker? No. Batman should not kill the Joker. I think Batman is the best because he's unwilling to do that. He's unwilling to decide what justice is for himself, and so ultimately only does that which is actually agreed upon and instantiated. He's the most rational and the best character, which is why he's got a plan for everything. He's the one with the plot armor. So yeah, I'm gonna bounce, guys. Anyway, so this is thank you everyone for watching. If you like this stream, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to support this channel and content that's probably better than this usually, then please check out Patreon, and there's some reward tiers there. And I will be uploading a video but with me, Rationality Rules, and Cosmic Skeptic. And I'm going to go and edit that right now, which is why I'm going to bounce. So take it easy, everyone. Have a lovely night. And, oh, by the way, thank you very much, Ethan Pollard, for supporting the stream. And as always, try to gain some perspective. The mic quality is nuts. What do you mean, like a good mic quality? Oh yeah, it's because if you mean that, because it's an SM7B, it's really nice. It was the kindness of the viewers that got us this. So yeah, thanks, man. That's cool to hear. Right, take it easy, everyone.